Into the U.S. economy, let's bring in Thomas Hayes. He's founder, chairman, and managing member of equity manager, Great Hill Capital. Thomas, what do you make of these numbers?
Well, ACA, I think it was kind of a wash. What we saw was core PCE was up just a hair, but it's still trending towards that 2% inflation target of the Fed. And the GDP, although it was revised down 0.1%, that was largely due to the private inventory investment being down and offset by government spending and consumer spending. And as we know in the U.S., never underestimate the consumer. When they have a job, they spend.
And if they have a job and they want to spend, what are they spending their money on?
Well, it seems like just about everything, ACA. I mean, we're just finishing up the earnings season with 75% of the S&P companies reporting. We beat across the board 3.2% earnings growth versus 1% earnings growth estimated. If you look at Q1 GDP now from the Atlanta Fed, they're estimating GDP growth in Q1 is going to be around 3% as well. So we continue to fire on all cylinders. We saw Chris Waller today talking about the possibility of 3 cuts towards the back half of the year, but it's not guaranteed. They want to see those inflation numbers come down, and they want to see that tomorrow with core PCE.
Sorry, I don't know if you already answered my question, but what are consumers spending their money on? What are they buying?
Well, across the board, certainly luxury items have been very, very strong. Travel and experiences, we're going to see the cruise line report earnings, as John Terrett was saying earlier. You name it, they've been spending. Apparel, you've seen the Abercrombie & Fitches of the world. So they've got their travel, they've got their goods, and I think we're seeing also a continued move in services, which is why services have remained a little bit sticky and been a little stubborn as it relates to the inflation numbers, I'll say.
And if you are an average American consumer and you are working and you do have an income, are there things you're holding back on in terms of spending?
Well, I think the interest rate sensitive larger items have been a little bit slower, but they're starting to come back. One of the companies we're invested in is Generac. They do home standby generators, and those are often financed because they're a large ticket item. Those have been slower, but they're starting now to reaccelerate with rates appearing that they're going to be coming down towards the end of the year. That has people optimistic. New car purchases have been good, but they could get a lot better relative to overall demand. If you look at new licensed drivers and the average car age on the road, both of those numbers are going up dramatically. So we should see a lot of new car sales. The lowered rates towards the back half of the year are really going to accelerate that pent-up demand. So they've been holding off on some of those bigger ticket interest rate sensitive items, and of course new houses with limited supply.
You know, when was the last time you were at the grocery store? Because I can tell you, every time I go to the grocery store, I am astounded by how much more I'm paying for groceries. I was going to ask you what the big concern for Americans are when it comes to economic issues, and I bet you one of it is inflation and the price of food.
Yeah, there's no question in the last few years the price of food has gone up materially. It's slowing. The pace at which it's going up is certainly slowing, but we saw from Walmart earnings, of course, consumers are dialed back a hair on discretionary items, you know, kind of the non-grocery part of their store, and focused more on the food because a lot of their discretionary income is currently being eaten up by the higher food prices that you're referring to, particularly the top end of the economic strata that has to be focused on the essentials for the time being.
How much of a concern, Thomas, is recession still this year?
Very low. Very low with this level of employment, with this level of growth. Inflation is coming down, productivity is gaining, and what we're going to see is that we're actually going to be able to sustain higher rates of growth than expected while inflation falls due to the abnormally high productivity gains that we're starting to see. Some of it's a result of efficiency, some of it's a result of AI and different efficiency measures that companies have put in place. And a lot of it has to do with, Acai, is CEOs were preparing all of last year for a recession that never came. So they got their efficiency in order, they cut costs, and now we still have a booming economy, and that's all going to the bottom line. So we're in a pretty good place. The only thing that could potentially impair that outlook would be if the Fed waits too long, because there is a lagged effect of such an aggressive tightening cycle, and it's, historically it's between 6 and 24 months. So we don't know when that's going to kick in, and they need to keep a hawk's eye on that so that when they do see that little sign of slowing, and I think we're seeing it in the inflation numbers, that they are the sooner they do a cut, the less cuts they'll actually have to do.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thomas Hayes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Asai.